Welcome to Transformational Leadership, the podcast for leaders building high-performance organizations and teams. In every episode, you will hear from executives and transformation experts who've led with vision, executed under pressure, and delivered real, scalable, and impactful results. You'll hear practical insights and leadership stories from executives who've driven change, delivering transformation, and consistently winning in highly complex environments. No fluff, just frameworks, lessons, and stories from the front lines of leadership. If you're serious about building competitive impact through people, you're in the right place. Here is your host, Jeff Harnois.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Transformational Leadership. My next guest today, Dethra Giles, Chief Human Resources Officer and Acting CEO at ExecuPrep, a performance optimization consulting firm with clients like Louis Vuitton and Kaiser Permanente, is going to join us. Dethra has such an interesting background spanning from entrepreneurialism to higher education, including inside the institution as HR and administrative leaders, but also as an adjunct faculty, teaching topics including business ethics, HR, and negotiation. On top of that, Dethra is a 4-time TED Talks speaker. I can't wait to hear about more of that. And if that's not enough, Dethra is also the author of a book called That's Not What I Said, Master Conflict with Conversational Competence. With that, everybody, please welcome my guest, Dethra, the Audacity broker. Welcome to Transformational Leadership.
Thank you, Jeff. I need to take you on the road with me. That was an awesome introduction.
I'm so honored to have you here today, and I cannot wait to get into this conversation. Let's start with Audacity Broker. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is and what it means, and then how that helps organizations that you work with?
So, most of my career, I've helped top level leaders. And one of the things that many of those leaders battled with is what they titled as confidence. And the more I began to work with them and explore, I recognized that most of them weren't missing confidence. And as you already know, my undergrad, my bachelor's degree is in English and Spanish. And so for me, words really, really matter because what we assign or title something is how we address that issue. And if we title it wrong, we give it the wrong energy and wrong way to address it. And so as I began to research, I was thinking people aren't lacking confidence because confidence is data. They know they're smart. They know their stuff. They know they graduate top of their class. What they lack is audacity, and audacity is action. And the example I give people is I am a shopaholic. I am a crazy dresser. You can see my head wrap. I love colors, patterns. And people will see me and say, oh my gosh, that looks so great, but I could never wear that. Well, knowing it's cute is confidence. Wearing it is audacity. And that's what most people lack. And so I said, no one needs more confidence. They need a broker, something they already know they have that can get them from what they have to how they need to behave. And so I went about my life becoming the audacity broker.
I love this framing. I love the example. As soon as you said it, my brain kind of lit up. I can think of 1,000 examples of where audacity is the difference maker. Out here in the Bay Area in California and technology, we work with a lot of really, really smart and competent people. That's never the issue. But having the audacity to put that into action in that sort of bold way, it's a brilliant, excellent framing. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. But that's what the audacity broker is. And I poured it into my individual clients. I poured it into ExecuPrep, and that's what we do.
Okay. I want to ask you a question we haven't talked about previously. When you think about audacity, and when you think about, delivering that to your client groups, without giving any names away for the obvious reasons, can you give me an example of somebody who got transformed? A little bit about a story about someone who got transformed through Audacity?
Yes, I had one client who was a CFO at a large organization. And when the organization brought me on to do some work with different teams in the organization, she identified me as the person that she wanted as her coach. And I don't always coach people because I'm busy running a company.
Right.
And so I said, "Hey, you signed the big check, so let's talk about this." And so I ended up coaching her. And as I coached her, what we realized was a difference between where she wanted and where she wanted to be, where she was and where she wanted to be, was audacity. She did not have the audacity to step away from her role and go after her dreams.
Before we get into the rest of the story, Deidre, what what do you think was holding her back? I mean, I'm certain the answer is going to be Audacity was sort of the engine that drove her there, but what was the resistance based on?
The resistance was based on fear. And yes, audacity is the overarching thing, but what drives that? She was afraid of potentially failing. So she wasn't audacious enough to take the action because what if I step out of this role I've always been in? I've always been in finances. My degree was in finance. I've had my entire career to be in the CFO of this multi-billion dollar organization as a finance person. I wanna step out and do this other thing. What if I'm not good at it?
Sorry for the interruption. From my perspective, when I think about the definition of audacity, it's kind of what you just explained, which is be afraid, but do it anyway. That to me is what audacity is. Be afraid, but do it anyway.
Absolutely. It's when I tell my children, I want you to be courageous, not fearless. Courage is doing it even though you're doing it even though you're afraid, doing it with your knees shaking, doing it with your teeth clacking together, doing it with goosebumps, but doing it and risking it, which is why in my household, we've never taken on the mantra that failure is not an option. Because if you believe that failure is not an option, you will never be audacious because you will only do the things you know you can do successfully. Failure has to be an option.
I wanna share a personal story. I've never talked about this in a public forum before. I have a niece, her name is Brittany, and when she was younger, she's a young mother now, but when she was younger, we took her to Great America, which is a big theme park, in Santa Clara, and we were waiting in line to do a ride called the Sky Flyer, and the Sky Flyer was literally they strap you into a swing, but you're face down, and they pull you up something like 10 stories. It's 100 feet in the air, and then they let you go, and you swing out and back. And we were standing in line, and she was having a fear-based response to that ride. Tears were coming out of her eyes. It was a visceral experience for her. She couldn't she couldn't stop the tears. She was having a conversation with me while her eyes were literally tearing. That's how afraid she was, and she was not going to say no to that ride. And it was just, watching the courage, what you're talking about, the courage for her to say, I am so afraid of this. My body is having a reaction, but I'm going to mentally overcome that and do it anyway. That memory always sticks with me when I think about the word courage. And I don't think I've ever really mentioned it, but thank you for bringing it up and allowing me to share it.
That's a great memory, but it's so indicative of what we see with leaders, and I'm sure you see it too. You're like, you you're looking at this ride, you see all the precautionary measures they're taking, you see that you're safe, and yet you still have this fear response. Now, fear is a great thing. Fear lets us know, "Hey, look and see if they are strapping people in properly. Stand back and let a few people go on before you and see how they come out. Do they come out okay?" And now that you have that data, because that's what confidence is data, now take this step. It's time to be audacious. You have all the data you need to know that you can move forward.
I love this modeling, Dietra. This is phenomenal. So tell me, let's get back into the story of the CFO. So she had dreams, she was afraid. What happened next?
But let's talk about how this lack of audacity of this fear impacted the company. She wasn't properly developing anyone behind her. So at any given moment, if something happened to her, the organization was in a lurch. Now, mind you, this is a multi-billion-dollar organization, and she's the CFO. You can't afford to be in a lurch because someone got the flu on a whim. Right? She wasn't, so there were people who were underdeveloped or people who were top performers, hypos, high potential high performers, and they were leaving because they saw no place for them in the organization, right? There was no knowledge transfer happening. And when I came in and worked with her, all of this started to happen. People began being developed. They saw themselves staying with the organization. They were at retention in the year I worked with her, retention in her department went up by 30%. And then guess what? She decided, I can do this. She left the organization. She left the organization in such a good spot that they didn't even have to look externally for a CFO. She had already transferred enough knowledge to train her successor. And we know this, the cost of hiring someone, promoting someone internally is significantly less than hiring someone externally. So they saved about 30% on their hiring costs by promoting someone internally. That person stepped into the role and they thought they were going to have to pay a consultant to come in during board time. They didn't. She trained this person so well that they were able to handle the board presentations by themselves. So they saved on hiring a consultant, and she left and went on to write a book. I won't say her name, but the book is called Retired and Killing It. And she is now doing her own thing, happy on the speaking circuit, doing exactly what she wanted to do.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And I think that's really a good example of audacity in practice and in motion. And something that you said there that just resonates with me, and it resonates with me every time I hear something like it, is our jobs as executive coaches. When we unlock someone's potential that we see and they don't see it for themselves, or they don't even think it's possible, and then getting them to that place, there's just nothing more gratifying to me in the work I do.
Nothing. That's, you know what, Jeff? I would say people often ask at Executive Pro, we work with large companies, like you mentioned, the Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, LVMH, and the Kaiser Permanente. Those large organizations that we work with are Cox Communications or Cox Industries. And I love those companies. So if you're listening, I love you. But I really love our smaller businesses, the Clayton fixtures, those places where we can actually see the direct impact. Like, I see their bottom line change. I see them leave a meeting and go and implement exactly what my team just said. And I see the direct impact in their teams, in their P&Ls. I can see that in real time. And so I love it when we get to work with those clients.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. Yeah, I just don't think there's anything more rewarding than, unlocking. And I love doing it at a leadership level because there's a multiplication, right? There's a force multiplier factor in play there. When we unlock the leader often then goes and unlocks other people in their own organization. So yeah, I love the prospect of being able to do it and celebrate it every time it happens. In a previous conversation, we were talking about one of your transformation successes. It was an organization where it was a family-based business, and the founders were ready for their exit. Can you tell us a little bit about that story and that transformation?
So what's funny for me is I've done a few of these, and Executive Rep has had a good time doing these. Founders always think they're ready to exit until it's time to exit.
I can totally see that.
It's kind of like your dog who's like, I need to go outside and go to the bathroom until you open the door and like go outside. And it's like, despite having lived in the house your whole life, you act like I'm never going to let you back in this house. That's how founders are when it's time to exit. Right? And when they pass it down to the next generation, they pass it down with the idea that you're going to do things the way I think they should be done, right? And when we come in and do these types of things, it's always this push and pull. Like I'd say in those situations, I use all of my degrees from the masters in English and Spanish to the org development to the conflict management. In this particular one that I'm thinking of, the founder was immigrant, had pulled up by their bootstraps, had done everything from scratch, and as they say these days, got it out of the mud. And they had this what they considered entitled group that they were passing it down to, so they didn't know what they were doing. Well, this newer generation had ideas of their own that were really, really good, and I had to bridge the gap between the two, getting and what really made the difference was getting the founders something of their own to do. When we found their thing that was not the company, they were like, "You can have it. I'm out of here." Right?
Huh. Let me understand this. This is fascinating. So rather than giving them a new but ongoing role with the organization, you found an alternative mission for them that they could go explore, which would then enable them to actually let go. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Here's the thing. Keeping them inside is like having your mother-in-law live in the house with you for the first year of marriage. It is like somebody there's always whispering, "You aren't quite doing it the way it should be done. That's not quite right. It should be this way." And as a new CEOs and new owners taking over, they needed to build their confidence without having someone in their ear whispering, "You don't know what you're doing. I've done this for 50 years." That would never happen if they stayed in the organization. So it was, let's find them their own thing to do, and when we did that, it was amazing. Here's what we did, we found what their dream was. They sacrificed their dream to do this, and it became successful, and it was like, now the company needs it to survive. This was how I sent money back home. This is what we did, and so I've been tired of this. Their dream was actually real estate. They wanted to own properties in different places. And so they became a real estate agent in their latter years. And they did it internationally. They spoke about six, they were, I call them oligarchs. They spoke about six different languages, and they went around the world. And I said, "You don't really want to buy real estate. You want to travel." So they went around the world scoping out different properties and helping people buy their winter homes or their summer homes in these beautiful places that they went to visit, and that was what they began to do.
Wow. What I had a little bit of a mind blown moment there as you were talking about it, because I was thinking about putting myself in that same scenario. What would I do and how would I approach, that conflict and the problem of helping the founders let go. And I was thinking of all the strategies that I would use to apply the problem of letting go, and how I might persuade or influence them. And this idea of giving them something else to go focus on had never occurred to me. And it's brilliant. First of all, it's brilliant in its simplicity. I just want to say that. But then you said something else that just took me over the top, which was, we went back and started asking them, what were their dreams before they decided to create the business that we were trying to get them to let go of. And again, it's like, it's just so smart and should be instinctive. And for some reason that did not occur to me. I'm really impressed with all of that. And the reason I'm impressed with it is because not only did you achieve your primary mission, which was get them out of the business so that the new owners could go, succeed or fail, but it's in their role, getting the founders to let go, but they went then and reconnected with their dreams, and they're probably living their best life right now. I'm so impressed with all of this, Deidre.
What was so funny to me, I knew we were successful when one day the kids that were the adults, they weren't kids, the people that the company was passed down to called and said, "I can't get granddad on the phone, like, I need his help, I need to know about something." And I was like, "Well, he's out." And he finally called, like, "Why have you called me like 6 times?" He's like, "I needed you for something." He was like, "You figure it out. You didn't just isn't that what you said you wanted?" And he was in some foreign country, hadn't told anybody where he and his wife were going. They were going on some random trip that they did at the last minute. And they were like, "We're detached. We're done. Don't call us."
It's like the best measure of success. I can't get a hold of Graham Dad to give me the advice or the perspective or the answer. That's phenomenal. What a great story. I just want to reflect on this for another second. The Yeah, I'm sort of breaking it down from a consulting standpoint and from an entrepreneurial standpoint. All of the instincts that you brought to that, but also the discipline that you brought to it and the vision that you brought to solving that problem. I'm impressed with all of it. Really, really well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
What I think is because of my background in conflict management, I am always comfortable figuring out what is the real source of our problem. And I often think we don't get to the source of the problem. The source of the problem is not I'm stuck in the business. The source of the problem is I have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I can't see and that's why so many founders have a hard time exiting. It hits them in the face all of a sudden like, "Wait a minute. If I relinquish this, who am I?" Especially as we reach our older ages, do I still have usefulness in the world? Why am I still even alive? What does life look like? Especially if you've been a founder of a successful venture, the idea these aren't the people that sit on their couches, eat bonbons, and watch soap operas all day.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think the takeaway for our audience, which is largely CHROs and HR executives, is exactly that. The mission isn't just to tactically manage the retirement of that executive or that leader. The mission isn't just simply the exit, but the real mission from my perspective is how do you help them transition and then transform to what's next?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
that's just awesome.
I say when we do that, especially as HR professionals, we release them to release information.
That's really what I'm thinking about here. It's like if you can help them let go, and that's really what your story talks about. But the mechanism that allowed them to let go was the focus on what's coming next. And so, again, for other HR executives who are transitioning senior leaders into a retirement space, if you really want them to have a successful exit, passing on institutional knowledge and the success strategies and deeper understanding, really setting up their successor for success, help them have a successful exit. Yeah, love that. That's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal content. I want to transition to another story that you and I talked about in our briefing. You were working with an organization, and I'm excited about this one because I think every listener or viewer of this podcast has either had or will have this problem. You were dealing with a low performing team. And in this particular example, there was kind of a lot at stake. They were working on a multi-million-dollar project that was on the brink of failing. And so I'd love to hear about that story. I'd love to hear about that transformation.
So I actually talked about this one in my second TEDx talk, and the organization brought me in because of my background in mediation and things like that. And we had two leaders that were bumping heads on this massive project. This is a multi-million dollar project. But when they brought me in, it was late and over budget and on the verge of failing. It was about to be over budget, on the verge of failing based on where they were in the trajectory of the project.
Before we jump into the details, and without giving anything away confidentially, can you give us the nature of the project? Was this a product based? Was it a program based?
Energy.
Energy. Okay, so in the energy sector.
Yes, in the energy sector. Huge project, engineers involved, and there were all these different teams involved in this massive project. Well, the two project leads were bumping heads. It was catastrophic. And they brought me in to do some mediation around the team because they were bumping heads. Other team members who had solutions weren't speaking up. And I talk about this in the book a little bit. I talk about how studies show us that in the US alone, companies lose about almost $300 billion annually because of people not speaking up. Because of silence. Yes, that's a lot of money. And when I'm speaking on stage, I use this example, and I got this example from these two people. I asked the question, how many of you have ever been in a meeting, heard a bad idea, and you knew this bad idea was not only going to cost time and money, but it was also going to fail, but you didn't say anything. And everyone raises their hand.
Wow. Yes. Yes.
And I say, when I say 300 to 500 billion dollars, that sounds like a lot of money. But if you look around this room, if each of us was just doing $100,000 project, we're getting close. And imagine if everybody else outside of this room could say the same thing. We can easily see how we got to $500 billion, right? And we probably think that number's kind of low based on what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was this. Everyone in the room could see, because you all are butting heads, I have something to say, and this is not going to work. What we're trying to do, this is not going to work. But no one said anything. What I did was I gave people on the team tools to communicate effectively without shrinking or flipping the tables over, because that's what the team was. It was a team of, I won't say anything, I'll be silent, or if I say something, I'm flipping the table over.
Huh. Extremes.
Yes, I gave them the tools to navigate the conversation so they could get their two leaders out of their way, and the people who were really doing the work could do the work without them being involved. And so that started happening, which got the project on target. Then I worked with the two leaders to actually be able to talk with each other and not at each other. And with them, I use my DARE model: describe, acknowledge, review, and engage. And I had them begin to have the conversations using that model. And they started having these epiphanies like, oh, is that what you meant when you said that? Because what I took that to mean was something totally different. Or your interpretation, one misunderstanding was, one guy told, it was a man and a woman, and he told the woman, well, I knew that you went to, underprivileged schools and this and that and other, and that you may not have understood some things. And she was like, yeah, that was in primary school, but my degree is from MIT. I don't know what you're talking about, right? And so it was things like that, and they started to clear up all these things, and just teaching them the skills to have the hard conversations, even though there was a potential for conflict, changed everything. Made the project come in early, under budget. They all got massive bonuses, did not share any of it with me, didn't even invite me to the celebratory dinner they had, which was at a five-star restaurant. But I'm happy that it was successful.
That's phenomenal. And you mentioned the book in the DARE model that you're talking about. Can that be found in the book?
Yes, the book is that's the crux of the book. That's not what I said. Master conflict with there it is, master conflict with conversational competence. Um, that is the crux of the book, is the DARE model. And that's around my second TEDx talk as well. 15 plus years of research. This is where I started teaching negotiations, where my master of conflict management came in. And I tell people my work in industry is really why this book got written. I get to speak a lot, but oftentimes people don't get the chance to hear me speak, or their company can't bring me in. And they're like, I need these tools for my team. We're battling on my team. Either people aren't speaking up, and I know they have good ideas. We have leaders that are going at each other's throats, and everybody's misunderstanding each other. And that's the crux of us not getting things done. I need something. And so the book was the something. And that's where I threw the DARE model in: describe, acknowledge, engage.
Yeah, I love that. Where can people find the book if they wanted to purchase it?
They can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, anywhere you buy books. The book is available, of course, on my website, DetraGiles.com. They can find it just everywhere you buy a book. You can find That's Not What I Said, and it's actually doing really well. It was just released in August after 15 years of researching. I feel like forever of writing, and it's been doing very well.
Nice. Well, congratulations. I love the fact that you've created a model that is now transforming organizations and provides a tool set that enables that.
Yeah, it's been a labor of love, and it came from the reality of psychology. Shows us that if you give people a formula, their likelihood of attempt goes up, which means their likelihood of success will go up. And without a formula, people stop. But people will often say, hey, if you give me a tool, an equation to follow, I'll do it. And that's what the DARE has done. DARE has given them a model to follow in the tough times.
And I just can't help but feel like the model then gets charged with the audacity component.
Oh my gosh. And so that's one of the pieces of it. I tell people, one area that, especially leaders, especially new leaders, where we are the least audacious is in speaking up. Everyone is afraid of sounding stupid, as if someone has sounded stupid and died because of it. Like, we each of us can remember a time where we heard someone say something dumb and they recovered, yet we feel like saying something dumb will be the end of our lives and career. And the reality is, you won't. You'll be okay. But having a tool that helps you say the hard things gives you that little piece you need to be audacious enough to speak up.
And you know what I love about in this particular context of Audacity, sometimes when you say the thing that you think is dumb, first of all, other people are thinking it already. They just don't have the courage to say it. And so, you having the courage to say it really brings that topic up for conversation and discussion and perhaps even debate. But for me, dropping in the weird perspective or the hard question, and then being able to sit back and watch other people react and then engage with that subject is just a wealth of what I would call intelligence that comes out of the group. And so again, thinking about those hard things from a more strategic perspective unlocks conversations that are really, really rich.
It absolutely does. I tell leaders, they ask me, how do you, Dietra, you enjoy, they call it chaos. You enjoy chaos. You enjoy debate. You enjoy encouraging people to have tough conversations. How do you do this on your own teams when you are the leader and you're running the company and you're having your team create projects? I tell them the one question I ask every time my team does an implementation, every time we take on a massive project, every time we strategize, the one question I always ask them to do is, before we end this meeting, I need for you all to give me 3 reasons why this won't work.
Love that.
And that encouraged the people who were sitting there thinking, this is not going to work. This could go wrong. It gives them permission to say what they were thinking. Cause now you ask, I'm not being insubordinate. I'm doing what you asked me to do. They were thinking, this is a really dumb idea. Does she know our clients? Our clients will never do that. Now I've given them permission to say the thing.
And now that they've said it, it's on the table and we can deal with it. Is it true? Is that an accurate opinion or perspective? Is that something we hadn't considered? And then we can go back and we can re-strategize and go, take another step forward. Yeah, I love everything about this. This is phenomenal.
I can't tell you how that question has made us lots of money.
Yeah.
It has made projects so much better because we can say, "You know what? You are right." And I'll ask the question, "Well, how can we mitigate this?" And we're sitting around the table thinking, we can't. Maybe we should let's pivot." Now, how do we pivot? Or it saved us money because someone asked a crazy question that we hadn't thought of, and we thought, we need to address that. So it saved us time and having to fix something that actually was going to be an issue had we not addressed it with that question of, what give me reasons why this won't work.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you what's coming up for me in this segment, and it's kind of a big deal as far as I'm concerned. It ties into one of my leadership philosophies, which is really one of agency and ownership. One of the things that I teach leaders all the time is you need to drive decision making down into your organization and as close to the customer as possible. When you do that, better decisions get made, faster decisions get made. Sometimes mistakes get made faster, which is okay because you can learn from them. And you end up delivering a significantly better product or service to your customer. When you do that, when you drive ownership and agency, you get clarity, you get really rich experiences and ideas, everything gets better. And so your question about how do you break this thing, or what's wrong with the thing, or how is it going to fail? However you ask that question is then going to engage people from an ownership standpoint. They are going to take ownership. We call it weigh in to buy in. and it really activates that. I love this perspective.
100%. I remember Zappos before they were purchased by Amazon. That was one of the things Tony Hsieh, who was the founder of one of the founders of Zappos, put in place. And if you recall, you could call Zappos, and the person you were on the phone with had the full autonomy and authority to fix whatever problem you had. And as a shopaholic, I loved it. Hey, got these shoes, didn't quite fit, and they would say, "Okay, well, Miss Giles, just send them back, and we'll send you a new pair." And I would get the new I'm like, "I just sent the old pair yesterday. How is the new pair already here?" They had the complete authority to fix my problem, like you said, at the lowest possible level. I was an addict of Zappos.
Yeah, yep. Just from that example, their promoter score was probably as high as it could be. Your loyalty as a customer was super high. Repeat business was probably on point for them. Yeah, yeah. That's how the world should work, according to me.
And so I tell people, open it up. That some of our even when I'm in organizations, I remember one organization I was with, and I ended up having to coach the CEO of this organization. And one day I told him, "You go into a meeting and you tell them, I don't know what to do about this. I need you all's help fixing it. And you sit down and you be quiet." And when he did that, everybody paused for a second. Of course, he hated the silence. He wanted to feel it. And I was sitting next to him. I said, "Listen, I am not a violent person, but I will break your shins underneath this table kicking you so hard if you speak up." And he said, "I've never been threatened by a consultant before. I don't know if this is protocol."
It's absolutely not protocol. That's why you should pay attention.
He sat there quietly, and they got up on the whiteboard. They started talking, throwing stuff out, and then somebody finally said, "Let's put this on the whiteboard." They had Six Sigma the problem before they left the room, and he was floored. And I looked at him after the meeting, and I said, "This is the level of brilliance that you have been sitting."
Isn't that the right observation? Right? When leaders are over indexing on hands-on versus, pushing ownership down, they are literally strangling the brilliance, the intellectual horsepower sitting around the table.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Really good stuff, Dieter. I have loved this conversation. Your stories are rich and beautiful and great concepts to take away. I want to pivot to a couple of other topics. The first one is, tell us a little bit about you. How did you get here? What are some of the big things that shaped how you showed up in this podcast today?
Oh my gosh. So I came from my father is from the Caribbean, Jamaica. My mother's from the US. And in Caribbean cultures, you're taught that to be successful means being a doctor, lawyer, or engineer if you're not measuring up.
And if you're not one of those, then you're not successful.
Oh, no, you're not successful. And so I went to college thinking I was going to be a doctor. And if I'm going to be a doctor, I'm not just going to be a regular doctor. I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. So I went to college to be a neurosurgeon. And I went to this place on campus that is equivalent to Dante's Infernos. It's one of the seven layers of hell. It's one of them. And it was a science center. So I'm in the science center and I realize I don't want to do this. This is not what I've been designed to do. And I realized I had the right concept, but the wrong title. I was meant to work on people's heads. I was meant to work on the brain, but the brains of organizations, the brains of people, changing how people operated, changing how organizations function. And then I began to think maybe I'll be an attorney, which is how I ended up in English and Spanish. So one of the leading degrees for getting into law school is English because there's a lot of writing involved. Went to English.
I did not know that, but that makes a ton of sense.
Most people do poli sci, but English is one of the number one admissions. So I ended up doing English and loved foreign language. Grew up in Miami, Florida, and so I loved the Spanish language. And plus, if you majored in Spanish, you had to study abroad. Sign me up. So did that, but then I graduated and realized did an internship at a law firm and realized I have no desire to dedicate that much of my life to any profession. Love my attorneys, love them, but that was not my lot in life. I work to live, not live to work. And so I went, and I've always been very strategic. So I realized I was going to go back to grad school. Didn't know for what just yet. So I wanted to go work, but I also knew from a strategic perspective that if I went straight to grad school, I might graduate and get a decent job. But if I took a very low paying job now with a lot of leadership duties, I could advance way past my peers once I got my graduate degree. So then I went and worked for an organization called CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates. In that nonprofit organization that worked with adjudicated youth, I got to do everything. I was the executive director, expanding the program into new counties. I worked with judges and lawyers and did um, manage law school interns and fundraising, all this other stuff. And so when I went to grad school advisor, I said, "Hey, I do everything, but this piece is what I love doing." And they said, "That's HR." And I thought, eh, I don't wanna necessarily do HR, so I went and got my MBA with the concentration in org development because I wanted to, again, change how companies operated, not just the hiring and the firing. I wanted to change how the brains of the organization. So I went into org development, and that's kinda how I ended up in the HR space and really doing HR. And then I realized I spent a lot of time navigating people's conflict. I need to know a lot more about this and just wanted to do a certification and found out the school had a master's in conflict management. So clearly I love school. My husband had to put a halt to. He's like, "No more school, we're done. No more degrees." And then I ended up becoming a faculty member. Um, because I wanted to be around school. But I've always loved speaking. I've always had this audacious spirit. I've always said, you know what? I'm smart enough. If it doesn't work, I'll fix it. And so that kind of led me down this path of trying the things that I was passionate about, and it landed me here.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. I can see that story building as you were telling it in real time, and it makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I'm taking away from this story, and I think it's just because it resonates so strongly with me and who I am too. You've got a profession and you provide value. You provide a service which provides value at the organizational and at the leadership level. You're not doing it because your job. You're doing it because it's who you are and it probably feeds your soul. And that's why it's resonating so much with me.
It does. I tell everyone they think about, well, what will you do when you retire? Because I talked about exit. What's your exit strategy? And I said, I will exit and speak about this stuff. I will get on stages. And because I absolutely am shocked that I get to do what I love doing every day, working with the clients. My team has to stop me and say, Dethra, your job is to go out and make sure we have the people to fill the coffers. And you can't do this every day with the client. That's what we do. And I miss it a lot because I absolutely love the work that we do.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And I also tell people when the word retirement, when the R word comes up, it's like I don't have a plan for that. I don't there's nothing in my body that makes me feel like I need to do that. I won't even consider it until I can't do what I'm doing anymore. I think that's really my mindset right now.
Yeah, I'm already thinking about it. I absolutely know what I'm going to do when I retire, and it will be doing. And I do a lot of speaking now, but I don't do as much of it as I would love to do. And it would absolutely be just keynote speaking as a full time thing.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, couple of questions that I ask all of my guests. I want you to have some fun with these if you can or if you want to. The first one is, what's the best piece of advice you received but didn't take?
Oh, leave.
Yeah, tell me more.
Yes. So I remember when I did not realize how this consulting world worked. As I told you, my upbringing, we didn't do that. And so one day someone reached out to me and they wanted to work with me to do some consulting. And I didn't know how much I should charge. So I just pulled this random, ridiculous number out of my nether regions and just said, this is how much we should charge for that. And someone said to me, if you get that, that means you're onto something. You should probably leave and pursue this. and I didn't.
Ah,
I did not have the audacity to step out and say, "You're" at the time I was young, I didn't have any children and I could have survived off of a McDonald's salary. It wouldn't have been an issue. And I just did not have the audacity to take that information and run with it, and I could have been in a very different place had I done that.
yeah, I love that. Yeah. Again, what's coming up for me is oftentimes what I see with really, really successful coaches and consultants is what they're giving you comes from real life experiences or problems that they've solved for already. You're buying the wisdom that they bring to the table as a result of that, and your story reflects that really well. What advice? Just a couple more questions before we pivot out. What advice would you give somebody? I, I often use the word younger, but it doesn't have to be younger. It could be somebody who's even in a career transition. They're trying out something new, but somebody who's new to the field of either HR or consulting or both. What advice would you give someone new in those any of those industries to help them be successful sooner?
So this question is easy for me because I teach, young college students HR, and I tell them, "If you are in HR because you love people, you will quickly leave HR and not like people anymore."
Mm-mm-mm. Isn't that the truth?
It's like HR is not about loving people. HR is about understanding how people operate in the organization and how to make sure that those two have a symbiotic relationship. If you are over indexed on people and not the organization, you will miss it. And if you're over indexed on the organization, not people, you will miss it. The two have to come together, and you are the chemist that makes sure there's an equal balance that doesn't upset the chemistry.
Love that. Love that. The chemist. Yeah. Love that whole perspective. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You are the translator and the person who's balancing the chemistry between people and organizations. What a brilliant perspective. Okay, last question. What advice would you give to somebody in your peer group?
You know what? This was something that, and this is very transparent. This is something that I had to come to the realization about, and I'm still leaning into it, is that you don't need more mentors, you need better peers.
Oh my gosh. Tell me more about that.
And you know what? At a certain point in when you're advancing, we always think that the key to advancement is mentors. Find someone who's done what you've done and they can kind of guide you along the way. And we often don't acknowledge the reality that we can reach a point where not many people have done what we've done or gone beyond that. And what we need to be is surrounded by people who are at our level that may be doing something differently or in a different industry, different profession, different field, different area, but we are not really looking for mentorship anymore. We're really looking for equivalent peership. And that's something that I don't think we talk about enough. Because think about a CEO of, let's lose Louis Vuitton, for example. Who's gonna be their mentor?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Leadership is lonely. I think people who are just coming up to leadership or haven't started that journey don't realize how, at times isolating it can be. And certainly, you're carrying a very large load. I don't think that I've ever considered this aspect, each of paying attention to who your peers are and how you engage with them.
Because that's at this point, we really need accountability from people who understand exactly what's going on. I'm not looking to go any quote unquote higher than where I am right now. So I need people who are where I am that understand, oh, Deetra, your expertise is HR, my expertise is marketing. Here's what you don't know. And I can help you with that, but here's what you know that I need. We need better peership.
Love that. That is phenomenal. And just sorry, I said that was the last question, but I do have one more now.
No, ask as many as you want. I love this stuff.
Now that you brought that up, how? So I get the concept, better peership. How do we make that happen?
It has been a journey for me once I had this epiphany. And so for me, it's finding places where people that are at my level go, that aren't industry specific, that are industry agnostic. And the reality is there are not a lot of them. And so I've done things like looking for mastermind groups. Places like, I don't want to put too many places, but places like Entrepreneur Organization is a great one, EO, that I found. That's a great place where a lot of people who have reached a certain level of entrepreneurship flock together. And so I too have been on a journey of finding, over the past year or so, a little over a year, finding places where entrepreneurs at this level of entrepreneurship go. And we know it can be difficult because people call themselves entrepreneurs and they may not be at the level that we're looking for. And so finding the places where true entrepreneurs that are at this level are has not been easy, but it's a journey.
Okay.
And so I don't have a full answer yet. I found a couple places that I'll be happy to send to you because they didn't pay you to be promoted, that I'll send to you. But yeah, it's been a journey to look.
Okay. Dethra, what a wonderful conversation. I am so appreciative that you took the time to speak with us today. I think there are several really, really interesting takeaways from your content and your contribution. It was a joy to have you here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Before we finally pivot out, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they wanted to reach you?
Absolutely. So I am on social media. On Instagram, I am Dethra_Giles. That is DETHRA_GILES. You heard me say employeepreneurs before. All of my employeepreneurs know to find me on LinkedIn. There I am, Dethra Giles. And you can always find me at DetraGiles.com and of course at execuprep.com, where I am the Chief Human Resources Officer.
And acting CEO until you find your CEO, right?
We're crossing our fingers, end of 2026, acting CEO until then.
Nice. Dethra, thank you very much. Wonderful to have you.
The Transformational Leadership Podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes vision, action, diagnostics, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, be sure to let us know in the comments. We'd love you to join the conversation and help us transform the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are transforming organizations, leaders, and teams. In the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.